Hello, everybody. Brandon Griffin, aka the Realty Resource here, and I've got another quick tip for you. Quick-ish tip. This is a question I've been getting a lot, so it deserves a little bit more attention. Amidst the pandemic, what's going to happen to home values? Well, I'm going to try to answer that question as quickly as possible with the most relevant info. Please like, share, subscribe, follow, do all those things. I will be doing weekly updates on Fridays, along with a question and answer session in case anybody has specific burning questions. So looking forward, no one really has a crystal ball, and no one can say exactly what's going to happen. This is our best estimate, based on what we've seen historically with the housing market, what really drives it, what affects it, and the conclusions that we can draw given that information. So what do we know about real estate values? Well, we're going to touch quickly on what a home is worth, getting into what is a trustworthy source and what's not. Then we're going to look a little bit at the influences on the housing market and specifically on prices. So definitely diving into supply and demand, looking back at previous recessions and what's happened at home prices, and seasonality and also market balance, a concept that I really want to make sure people get. And then finally, wrapping up with some core concepts, things that are like mechanics behind the scenes that are always true and always good to keep in mind and help you to make decisions. So then we'll end with some predictions. So determining the value, truly a home is worth what a buyer is willing to pay for it and a seller is willing to sell it for in an open market. That is the definition. So the listing price that you see on any given home for sale is just a jumping off point. It's just some place to start. It's truly a test of the market, and the market is ultimately what determines the price. So you might get an appraisal from an appraiser, and that appraised value comes from someone whose job it is to figure out what it's worth. They actually do perform an analysis and provide a report with data. That data is usually a little old because they can't use anything but closed data. It's a subjective opinion, meaning it's more of an art than a science. Not every no two appraisers are going to get the same value. And it's really heavily influenced by the anchor that you give them. That is the contract price or maybe your refi target. And this is used to determine typically a loan amount. So if there's no loan involved, the appraised value doesn't really matter. The assessed value is what your county assessor is looking at. They're using public records and a system basically just to figure out what to tax you. It can be very inaccurate, but it can also be challenged if you use a professional like myself to help you with that. If there's some advantages and disadvantages. So before you do it, be sure to ask. And then lastly, these AVMs, these estimates, things that you see like that, they're automated valuation models. So it's a computer doing a human's job. It's an algorithm that uses recent market data to estimate a value. It can be very inaccurate. It can also be accurate. So, you need to touch base with someone to make sure. It's not a good source for making financial decisions. So as agents, we are able to perform comparative market analysis for you, which is like a mini appraisal. So if you ever want one of those, please reach out and let me know. And then we can also do some monitoring of your value for you as we all kind of move through this to make sure that nothing affects the goals that you might have for your real estate. So looking at what actually determines prices, it's supply and demand, just like every other market. What we can see here is that we've been in one of the strongest sellers market in Colorado's history. There's just so many more buyers than there are sellers right now. We're in this super, super low inventory environment. As of right before the pandemic, we were looking at less than 1 month of inventory, meaning that if nothing else came to the market, if it all stopped, we would sell out in less than a month. And so now we're actually testing that theory because this is a metric we've always used, but now we're actually seeing if it holds true. The other thing is population growth. So what really fuels the demand? It's all the people moving in. And this is census data looking at Colorado all the way out until 2030. And it looks like, we're planning on continuing to have about 40 to 50,000 permanent new residents moving in. Looking back at recessions. So what happened to housing prices in the previous recessions? Well, for the U.S. in the last 5 recessions, housing prices only dropped in 2 of them. And if you look at Colorado, which is the purple data here, housing prices only actually dropped in 1 recession. And it was the one recession that was caused by housing. There were a lot of people that were underwater. They didn't have the equity they thought they had in the home. There was loose lending. But truly, the real estate market isn't following the stock market, and recessions don't necessarily equate to housing crises. As of right now, things are looking pretty strong. My last two listings in the last 2 weekends, and it's April 7th right now, have had multiple offers. So my sellers are very happy. Buyers are being challenged out there right now. We also have a very seasonal market here, and that does affect prices. Every single year, you'll see that the prices go up and then they come down, and they go up and they come down. In general, you can see this trend over 5 years is that they're rising at about 6%, but they will vacillate. They'll fall 3 to 8% between the peak in June and typically about October, September every given year. So that's usually when the media likes to call attention to the market cycling, but it's just a seasonal cycle, not a total cycle. Now, this market balance concept I want to make sure that you get, because it doesn't really necessarily matter if we lose some buyers out of the buyer pool or some sellers out of the seller pool, as long as we lose them in equal proportion. In that way, the prices will likely stay the same. So let's look at this example. We have 3 houses, and let's say we have about 6 buyers for every 1 house. So that's 18 buyers. And right now we're hearing that the worst case scenario is, COVID could probably cause unemployment to go to 30%. I'm going to make this seem even worse, and you can see that it doesn't necessarily, even with a much, much worse, let's double it. Let's say 60% dropout. So we have, our bar workers that are now out of the pool. We have our restaurant workers that are now out of the pool. We have airline industries, maybe people in oil and gas. And then let's just say we have a final 3 buyers, all of which had their down payment in the stock market and now can't purchase because they don't have the down payment anymore. So we've just knocked out like 60% of all of the buyers, which again is doubling kind of the worst case scenario that we're hearing of right now. And let's say, there's a few of these 3 sellers, 2 of them are quite scared that, people will bring the virus into their house. So this person stops showings and this person stops showing. Who knows, maybe they'll bring the house back to the market after this all passes. But for now, we've now lost these sellers as well. So we only lost 2 sellers and we lost a ton of buyers. But you can see here that we're down to 6 buyers to 1 house, which is the same proportion that we had before, which means the prices are likely not going to vacillate as much, but the transaction number will drop significantly, which is exactly what we're seeing right now. So now this can change. This is just kind of the scenario that we're seeing at the moment. And who knows how many of the buyer pool will come back after everything's kind of released. The longer all of this lasts, the more likely it will dramatically affect either side. Because if we have some foreclosure activity, people that just recently bought that don't have a lot of equity might not be able to make their payments. And if the government can't fulfill their promises to back everybody up at the moment with these stimulus packages, then we could see some changes here. But if these losses remain proportional, we're not going to see a change in prices. There's another concept here that I want to show you that will change prices, and it will probably show up in the media because they love to talk about when prices drop. So this is something called mixed variance, and what I'm going to use here is the example of you own a pizza place, and you have 2 types of pizza. So you have a cheese pizza, plain Jane cheese, and then you got a fancy pizza. Maybe it's gluten-free, dairy-free, I don't know, vegan, whatever. It costs a lot of money. So you have both of these pizzas, and this is about how much you sell. You sell the cheese for $1 a slice. You sell the fancy stuff for $5 a slice. So this could represent our first-time housing market, our kind of entry-level buyers, and our luxury market. If we sell 100 of the cheese slices and we sell 50 of these fancy slices, we make $100 and $250 respectively, which means our average price per slice is $2.33. Now, let's say some time passes and costs go up, or now we're able to charge a little bit more. So for the cheese, we're getting $1.25. We actually raised the price, and for the fancy, we've got $5.50. Now, the number of how many sales we do changes. Cheese becomes more popular. We do 120. People stop caring about gluten, and so we only sell 30 of the fancy ones. Now the revenue stream is 150 and 165, which means that our average price per slice actually went down to 210, and that's due to the mixed variance. But you can see here that our cheese actually went up by 25%. So imagine a first-time home buyer buying a house at $300,000, and now it's worth $375, or the fancy house over there went up by 10%. Both prices went up. Now, the number of cheese slices actually went up too. Like, we sold a lot more, but we sold less of these fancy slices. Therefore, when we bring these 2 prices together, we get a lower average price, which is exactly what the media is going to do. Is they're going to see the average home price in Denver dropped, when truly for most of the people out there, the house prices went up and more transactions wound up happening. So if you're just relying on what the info is that they're telling you, and it's not, you're not drilling down on exactly specifically what you're looking for, it's not going to be accurate. And finally, just going back to some basics, some real basics here. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. People will always need housing. Even those that wind up losing their jobs and losing their houses are going to become renters. So if anything, the rental market is probably going to strengthen. But this truly is one of the safest investments you can make, is in real estate, because you need a place to live. And this is looking at the home and condo appreciation over the last 45 years, and it's averaged about 6% between the two of them. And if you look, there's really no 10-year period in Colorado's history where you would have lost money if you had purchased real estate. So it really has to do with the time frame. I think that's one of the biggest considerations right now, is if you're planning to be in this home for 5 years or more, I think it's still a good time to buy, regardless of what's coming down the pike. Finally, let's get to some predictions, because that's what most people want. This is kind of my market outlook. And again, things are changing daily, but we're trying to base this on principles that are pretty sound. So the longer COVID countermeasures last, the greater the effect on housing market. The number of transactions will drop significantly. In fact, we've been playing with this: are we essential? Are we not? Are we critical? Are we not? As of yesterday, the 6th, we're back to not being able to do showings, only to do the closings that are currently in process. So yeah, we're going to see a pause and a significant drop in transactions, but it doesn't mean we're going to see the prices drop. If the number of buyers and sellers withdraw from the market proportionally, favor and demand will remain the same, which means we're going to see less price fluctuation. If that changes, then yes, we can start to see some price fluctuation, or we might hear reports of price fluctuation. If the interest rates remain low, we will likely see this strong seller's market late into the year. All those sellers that are waiting, they're not out of jobs. They still have the house to sell, so they're just waiting for a little bit of time until this all passes. If the mortgage interest rates increase significantly, all bets are off. That can significantly change the demand side. And the media will likely blow any normal changes out of proportion. So be on the lookout. If you're hearing of things and they're affecting your decision, or you're just curious about what's possible for you, please reach out to a professional. And as of right now, the stakes are high and the environment is very fluid. So it's not the time to test a rookie. This is definitely the time to give seasoned, established pros the business, because they're going to be able to guide you in the best way possible. That is what I am here to do. Please like, subscribe, follow. I'll keep bringing you any content like this as the questions bubble up in my my sphere in my database. And we'll do the weekly update with everything relevant in real estate. I call it the Rooster. And that comes Friday mornings. We release at 11, and we'll do a live question and answer right after. All right. Thank you guys so much. Stay safe. Stay home.